The Book of Revelation, chapter 17. Then one of the 7 angels who had the 7 bowls came and talked with me, saying,
Come, I will show you the judgment of the great harlot who sits on many waters, with whom the kings of the earth committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth were made drunk with the wine of her fornication.
So he carried me away in the Spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sitting on the scarlet beast, which was full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. The woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet, and adorned with gold and precious stones and pearls, having in her hand a golden cup full of abominations and the filthiness of her fornication. And on her forehead was a name written, Mystery Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and the abominations of the earth. I saw the woman drunk with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And when I saw her, I marveled with great amazement. But the angel said to me,
Why did you marvel? I will tell you the mystery of the woman and of the beast that carries her, which has the 7 heads and the 10 horns. The beast that you saw was and is not, and will ascend out of the bottomless pit and go to perdition. And those who dwell on the earth will marvel, whose names are not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they see the beast that was and is not and yet is. Here is the mind which has wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits. There are also 7 kings. 5 have fallen, 1 is, and the other has not yet come. And when he comes, he must continue a short time. The beast that was and is not is himself also the 8th, and is of the 7, and is going to perdition. The 10 horns which you saw are 10 kings who have received no kingdom as yet, but they receive authority for 1 hour as kings with the beast. These are of one mind, and they will give their power and authority to the beast. These will make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb will overcome them, for he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and those who are with him are called, chosen, and faithful. The waters which you saw, where the harlot sits, are peoples, multitudes, nations, and tongues, and the 10 horns which you saw on the beast. These will hate the harlot, make her desolate and naked, eat her flesh, and burn her with fire. For God has put it into their hearts to fulfill his purpose, to be of one mind, and to give their kingdom to the beast, until the words of God are fulfilled. And the woman whom you saw is that great city which reigns over the kings of the earth.
So based on what we've read, what is Mystery Babylon? Well, based on what we looked at, the harlot is Mystery Babylon. She sits on many waters, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her. The inhabitants of the earth were made drunk with her fornication. Plus, she sits on a beast from the pit. She's drunk with the blood of the saints and those martyred for Christ's sake. And it's important to note that the many waters that she sits on are peoples, multitudes, nations, and tongues of every language. And it's also worth noting that Babylon is the city that reigns over the kings of the earth. So with that said, what is this Mystery Babylon? Now, if you look up on YouTube and on the internet, America and Babylon, you will see quite a few videos and articles that do present convincing arguments that America is Mystery Babylon. We can't overlook certain things that John writes about in his vision of the woman on the scarlet beast. Because it is true that America has turned a cold shoulder to Christ, and that we have been exceedingly wicked as both a nation and a society, and have encouraged all the other nations in the world to do the same. We have fallen for LGBTQ, and we have aborted many human babies in the womb. And we use that as a way of escape from poor choices. Baal and Moloch have both become our gods. Everything that we have done as an iniquity, the other nations have followed and have partaken in our wickedness. We have accepted the aid of the beast. And unfortunately, we are not afraid to brag to the whole world about it either. Because in sporting events and concerts that we do, there is usually something used as a prop or a moving, animate object that symbolizes Baal. Either as a calf or a bull, or you'll even see a pyramid symbolizing that we have turned to that as the source of our success. It may seem like the mother of harlots and the abominations of the world does match America's description, because what we have done, the world has copied. However, there's a couple things that I have not heard one of these people touch up on that I think are important. And if you are aware of an article that talks about America being Mystery Babylon that actually does cover both of these issues I'm going to bring up here, please give a link to it in the comments. Where does "she's drunk with the blood of saints and those martyred for Christ's sake"? America has made fun of Christians.
Mock them, ridicule them. In public. Don't fall for the convention that we're all too polite to talk about religion. Religion is not off the table. Religion is not off limits. Religion makes specific claims about the universe which need to be substantiated and need to be challenged and, if necessary, need to be ridiculed with contempt.
We even saw it during COVID-19. We saw churches getting shut down. Pastors who continued to minister were severely punished.
Sunday, worshippers packed into the river at Tampa Bay Church despite health warnings, strict social distancing guidelines, and an order to close all but essential services. Its pastor, Rodney Howard Brown, received several warnings from police before he was arrested on Monday. The authorities say his actions are a reckless disregard for human life.
Shame on this pastor, their legal staff, and the leaders of this church for forcing us to do our job. That's not what we wanted to do during a declared state of emergency.
Lastly, I'd remind the good pastor of Mark 12:31, which says there's no more important commandment than to love thy neighbor as thyself. Loving your neighbors is protecting them, not jeopardizing their health by exposing them to this deadly virus.
A pastor in Melbourne Southeast faces serious charges after holding a church service in open defiance of the lockdown. He believes the pandemic is a hoax and says he'll obey the word of God rather than the chief health officer.
There were no masks, no social distancing, and no respect for the rules.
We have situations where religious liberty have been tried to be taken away from us. However, religious liberty is still protected. Therefore, we are not being martyred for our faith here yet. We're not anywhere close to being martyred for our faith here. So even though America may match the description of a mother of harlots and the abominations of the earth, and even though we may be sitting on a beast from the pit, we are not drunk with the blood of the saints for Christ who have been martyred for Christ's sake. We may have turned a cold shoulder to Jesus as a nation, but we are not putting people to death just because they are worshipers of Christ. Because that's what this text is saying. She is drunk with the blood of the saints and those martyred for Christ's sake. Everybody scoffs at the fact that people still believe in God, in Jesus. and listen to the Holy Spirit. Like,
I don't know if I want that.
It's one thing to talk to Jesus. It's another thing when Jesus talks to you.
Exactly. Okay, well, that's different.
That's different. That's called mental illness, if I'm not correct.
But I think...
Hearing voices. My question is, can he talk to Mary Magdalene without his wife in the room?
But we are not putting people to death just because of their belief in Jesus. We also can't overlook the verse at the very end of chapter 17, where it says, Babylon is a city that reigns over the kings of the earth. And it's true. We have 800 military bases all over the world right now. 800 military bases. Now, most of these bases were kept after America won World War II, when the U.S. took position as global leader and peacekeeper in and around Japan and Germany. But then, after we had the Cold War and the Korean Wars and the Vietnam War, this increased demand for U.S. infrastructure in these areas. And as a result, we have set up posts all over the globe to ensure a geographical foothold in places that are vulnerable to terrorism or acts of terror. And because of this, we spend roughly $100 billion a year, at least, to keep these bases functioning and running. Now, the steps that we take to stabilize a region to suppress insurgencies in the area, whether that be to increase medical aid, available essential resources like water, and establishing healthier community services, those actions that we take may seem colonialistic to some, but we are not reigning over the people. At least that is what I originally thought before I did the study. But upon doing a word search on the original Greek behind the word reigns, we get the Greek word echo. That's not how you pronounce it, but that's how it's spelled. Echo, which means to have, be in need with, and mainly to have, to hold on to. So, in reading this text, and the woman whom you saw is that great city which reigns or has a foothold on the kings of the earth. In that regard, of having a foothold on the kings of the earth, it makes sense. In that particular clause, yes, we are reigning over the people. But there is one thing that we need to look into, though. In the entire Bible, every time God is speaking about a particular nation of peoples, whoever is writing that book and that particular passage within the book concerning the nation, it is always recorded as a nation that he is speaking to. America never shows up in the Bible. And even in the vision of Mystery Babylon, America is not specific. Even though America does check out on a lot of those things, God is not speaking about the whole nation. He's really talking about a city. I even did a word search on the city. If we go to Tools, and then we look up city, the Greek word behind the city is polis, or polis. And it literally means city. Now, in a more detailed definition, it can also mean one's native city, a city in which one lives, and it can also mean the inhabitants of a city. And it literally means to dwell, or rather denoting originally fullness. It literally means a city. So we're not specifically talking about a nation here. We're talking about a city. So, if America is Babylon, then what in America could symbolize Mystery Babylon? We have New York City, and we have Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. has the control of these bases all over the world. New York City is responsible for trade, but then again, that begs the question. Are we talking about a particular city, or, since we are talking about Babylon here, are we talking about an organization? Okay? Here's what I mean by that. Archaeology has proven that there is major similarities and connections between the Tower of Babel and Babylon. It says in the book of Genesis chapter 11, "Now the whole world had one language and one speech. And it came to pass, as they journeyed from the east, that they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there. Then they said to one another, Come, let us make bricks, and bake them thoroughly. And they had brick for stone, and they had asphalt for mortar. And they said, Come, let us build ourselves a city, and a tower, whose top is in the heavens. And let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be scattered abroad over the face of the whole earth." So Nimrod's dream was to actually unify the people, whereas God wanted them to scatter and fill the earth. He didn't want them all in one spot with one language. He wanted them to be scattered abroad the earth. He wanted to have variety. And he wanted them to go and explore the world that he had created and fill it and multiply it. Nimrod wanted to unify the people. He wanted them all in one spot. And here in Revelation 17, it says the harlot sits over all the multitudes of peoples, nations, and tongues, and that she reigns over them. So, with that in mind, we need to go to Isaiah 14, verse 3. "It shall come to pass in that day, the Lord gives you rest from your sorrow and from your fear and the hard bondage in which you were made to serve, that you will take up this proverb against the king of Babylon and say, How the oppressor has ceased, the golden city ceased. The Lord has broken the staff of the wicked, the scepter of the rulers." Now notice how he said rulers here, and the harlot sits over the rulers. "He who struck the people in wrath with a continual stroke, he who ruled the nations in anger, is persecuted, and no one hinders. The whole earth is at rest and quiet. They break forth into singing. Indeed, the cypress trees rejoice over you, and the cedars of Lebanon, saying, Since you were cut down, no woodsman has come up against us. Hell from beneath you is excited about you to meet you at your coming. It stirs up the dead for you. All the chief ones of the earth it has raised up from their thrones, all the kings of the nations. They shall speak and say to you, Have you also become as weak as we? Have you become like us? Your prompt is brought down to Sheol, and the sound of your stringed instruments. The maggot has spread under you, and worms cover you. Now, this is to the king of Babylon, but if we read further, Isaiah is not finished speaking against the king of Babylon. He continues into verse 12 and onwards, and now he's talking to Lucifer. But he's still not finished speaking to the king of Babylon. He's talking to Lucifer now. He's saying, How you are fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning! How you are cut down to the ground, you who weaken the nations! For you have said in your heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will also sit on the mount of the congregation on the furthest sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. and I will be like the Most High. Now, what was the Tower of Babel? The Tower of Babel was to not just unify the people, but also climb higher in the heavens. And here, this is what Lucifer's doing. He said, I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. And Isaiah continues in verse 15. You shall be brought down to Sheol, to the lowest depths of the pit. Those who see you will gaze at you and consider you, saying, Is this the man who made the earth tremble, who shook the kingdoms, who made the world as a wilderness and destroyed its cities, who did not open the house of his prisoners? All the kings of the nations, all of them sleep in glory, everyone in his own house, but you are cast out of your grave like an abominable branch. Now, am I applying here that the harlot is Lucifer? No, I am not doing that at all. But what this passage is saying is that the king of Babylon is Satan himself. So now, back to my original question. Are we talking about a specific city in a nation like America? Or are we talking about an organization that sits above all the nations, including America? And if we are talking about an organization rather than an actual nation or a city, then what organization could possibly match America in bases all over the world that, like America, is interested in global peace? The UN. Okay. Babylon is a city that reigns over the kings of the earth, and that she sits on many waters, peoples, multitudes, nations, and tongues. Now, this is not a conspiracy theory. If you look up how many bases the UN has around the world, the UN is in possession of 750 bases around the world. That is only 50 bases short of the United States. Now, just really quickly here, because I'm not going to spend a lot of time in this, but I just wanted to show you this article from the UN's website that briefly gives an explanation on what they are doing. They say the United Nations military personnel are the blue helmets on the ground. Today they consist of over 70,000 national armies from across the globe. We work alongside UN police and civilian colleagues to promote sustainability and security and peacekeeping processes. We protect personnel and property. We work with local communities and security forces to promote lasting peace. In many missions, we offer the protection of civilians at the heart of our mandate. Blue helmets are protecting populations against threats and contributing to a secure environment. And then it says, we have more than 97,000 UN uniformed personnel coming from over 120 countries. They come from nations large and small, rich and poor. They bring different cultures and experience to the job, but they are united in their determination to foster peace. Currently, the majority of troops come from African and Asian countries, while the contribution of Western countries is still increasing. We are just one nation amongst the other nations that make up the UN. America is not the only nation in charge of the world. America is just a piece of that. With that said, I believe that America is rather one of the many nations that are under Babylon. So, Lucifer, or rather Satan, is the king of Babylon. what is Babylon? Well, I think it is safe to say that Babylon, that Mystery Babylon here, is not any particular nation. Because it says in Revelation 17 that all the nations of the world sit under her, and that she sits on top of them. Therefore, she is above the nations of the world. And it also says that she is drunk with the blood of the saints, and that all the nations of the world are rich because of her. It says in another place. Lucifer is the king of Babylon. And after all, it was Lucifer who offered Jesus all the kingdoms of the world if he would bow down and worship before him. I think that we will find Mystery Babylon by following all of the talk of a unified global religion, the New World Order, talk of unifying the nations. I think if we follow those conversations, we will, for sure, find Mystery Babylon.